Hello, this is Eye on Africa with me, Yinko Etade. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines across the continent. The European Parliament calls on EU member states to officially designate the Rapid Support Forces in Sudan a terrorist organisation. Meanwhile, there's mounting concern over a new cholera outbreak, which has already claimed 114 lives. Kenya's Rastafarian community waits with bated breath as the country's High Court gears up to deliver a ruling on the legalisation of marijuana. Rastafarians say smoking cannabis is a form of worship in their religion. Morocco is still reeling from a heartbreaking 2-0 defeat to France, ending the Atlas Lions' historic World Cup journey. Welcome to the programme. A push to label Sudan's Rapid Support Forces as a terrorist organisation is gaining momentum here in Europe. The European Parliament is urging member states to officially designate the RSF. During a vote on the dire situation in the Sudanese city of El Obeid, MEPs also addressed the broader conflict in Sudan. For the first time, the Parliament explicitly condemned the RSF's foreign backers, naming the United Arab Emirates. Our regional correspondent, Bastien Renouy, reports.
It will not end the war in Sudan, but it's already a huge step forward. During the past few months, I spoke to many experts of the war in Sudan, and they all say that if the goal is to implement a ceasefire in Sudan, it's important for the international community to name and put pressure on those who are financing this war, and that includes the United Arab Emirates. It's been proven in several investigations. They support the Rapid Support Forces. So it's now done by the European Parliament, despite the fact that the Patriots for Europe, it's a group that's gathering the nationalist and the far-right parties, did not want to see the name of the UAE in the resolution, and so they voted against it. In the resolution, the Parliament also condemns in the strongest terms the war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in Sudan. They call on the Rapid Support Forces to stop the siege of El Obeid, the capital of North Kordofan, and they also calls for the EU to urgently increase humanitarian support for Sudan, including for survivors of sexual violences, for those who have been displaced by the conflict and for those who face hunger. And finally, the resolution calls on the member states to be more involved in the peace negotiations. So far, many negotiations have been organized, many meetings between the Rapid Support Forces, the Sudanese military, the USA, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, but so far it's been unsuccessful. No ceasefire has been implemented in Sudan.
We're staying with Sudan because the WHO is sounding the alarm over a new cholera outbreak. Officials say a fresh wave of the disease has already claimed 114 lives, with more than 1,330 confirmed cases now reported. They are warning that the war and the mass displacement it has triggered could exacerbate the spread. Cholera is preventable, but can be deadly if not treated quickly. And concern is once again mounting over the besieged El Obeid. Take a listen to what the WHO has been saying.
We are particularly concerned about the spread to El Obeid in North Kordofan, where the access is very limited and where the fragile health system is under increasing strain. Health facilities are overwhelmed there, and access to care is very, very limited. Beyond cholera in El Obeid, we are deeply concerned about the broader humanitarian needs and growing protection risks, as you know. And this is echoing what unfolded in El Fasher last year, unfortunately.
Next, another legal setback for the massive EACOP pipeline set to carry oil from Uganda to Tanzania. 4 Ugandan farmers have taken their grievances over the $5.6 billion project all the way to the court in the UK. They say their land will be directly affected by the pipeline's 1,400-kilometre route and have filed a lawsuit this week in the High Court in London against the British company behind the project. Our regional correspondent, Oro Bayoud, went to speak to one of the lawyers representing the farmers.
A new legal battle, this time coming from the UK, is stirring up the debate over EACOP, the pipeline meant to transport Ugandan oil all the way to the Tanzanian coast. Directly affected by the pipeline's route, 4 Ugandan farmers went to the London High Court this week. They're trying to stop its 2027 launch from going ahead. The project is mostly owned by Total Energy. According to the plaintiffs, it has already forced over 100,000 people off their land. They complain about unfair compensation and major risks to the local ecosystems. Total Energy, on its hand, insists it respects international, environmental and social standards.
This case is incredibly important. First, for our clients who are suffering so significantly because of the operations of EACOP and the wider impacts that will have on climate change in Uganda. But also it is illustrative of a case being brought against a global north company that is extracting so much profit and natural resources from a global south country like Uganda with disregard to the impact that it has on the communities.
The plaintiffs want EACOP Limited, which is registered in England, to be held accountable under Uganda's own constitutional, environmental and climate laws. The farmers chose London over Kampala, fearing they wouldn't get a fair trial in a country where EACOP is a top government priority. However, for the head of the African Energy Chamber, this lawsuit is a form of colonialism 2.0. He argues that decisions about Uganda's energy future should be made at home, not in Europe.
French President Emmanuel Macron has been hosting his South African counterpart today at the Élysée Palace. The bilateral meeting kicks off a 3-day visit to France for Cyril Ramaphosa. His trip does come on the heels of the G7 summit in Évian-les-Bains in June, which South Africa was not invited to. The country has been a regular guest at past summits, but France chose to invite Kenya to the meeting this time round. Pretoria says it was snubbed because the US had threatened to boycott the meeting if South Africa was present. Well, France has now denied that claim. Moving on, Kenya's Rastafarian community is holding its breath for what could be a landmark ruling from the courts. The High Court will have to decide on July 15th whether Rastafarians can smoke cannabis legally. For years, they have been calling for the legalization of marijuana, which they consider essential to their religion. The ruling could have far-reaching consequences, while freedom of religion is absolute in Kenya. The country also enforces strict anti-narcotics laws. Bastien Renouy and Elodie Cousin report.
Rastafarians gathered for a Sabbath service in a place they usually keep secret, their tabernacle. This is where they sing, pray, and smoke marijuana.
The Most High gave the herb for the service of man. So as a Rastafari priesthood, we know the herb to sanctify the environment, to chase away bad vibes, to cleanse, to invite the Holy Spirit, to invite the spirit of our ancestors.
Kenyan law prohibits the use of the drug, so the community has taken the matter to court in an attempt to have it decriminalized.
We are defending our culture. We cannot continue to keep hiding ourselves as we practice our culture.
For them, Kenya's constitution guarantees every religion the right to worship freely. The country's first Rastafarian lawyer filed the petition.
If the decision is against us, it will, in a way, limit the way we enjoy the freedom of religion, because the freedom of religion is one of the basic human rights, both in national laws and also international law.
The authorities, however, point to the harm the substance can cause. This hospital regularly treats cannabis users.
It destroys a little part of the brain slowly, gradually. So at some point, the more they smoke it, the more it will damage the brain. Then now they start getting the mental disorders.
An argument that fails to convince Rastafarians, who instead point to the example of medical marijuana in an effort to win over public opinion.
Morocco is still licking its wounds after Thursday's heartbreaking 2-0 defeat to France. Kylian Mbappe opened the scoring after seeing an early penalty denied by goalkeeper Yassine Bonao, before Ousmane Dembélé sealed France's place in a third straight World Cup semi-final. Despite the loss, Morocco made history as the first African nation to reach the World Cup quarterfinals at consecutive tournaments. Let's hear from how fans have been reacting.
We expected a better performance from the Moroccan national side, compared with the matches against the Netherlands, Canada, and even previous matches such as the one against Brazil. But it became clear that France were on another level. We didn't have many chances, clearly not as many as in the previous matches. So congratulations to France. But we must continue on the path we have embarked on. Before 2018, we hadn't taken part in the World Cup for 20 years, and last time, in 2022, we reached the semis, and now the quarterfinals. So we must continue along this path.
It is certain that Morocco have proven they belong among the world's top teams, even before the 2022 World Cup. Then in Qatar, the proof was there as Morocco finished in 4th place. They also showed at the Africa Cup of Nations that they were capable of reaching the final, something that had not happened since 2004. And once again in this World Cup, several major teams were eliminated, while Morocco made it all the way to the quarterfinals. This shows that Morocco, praise be to God, have reached a very high level and can compete with the world's biggest football nations.
As for coach Ouabi, there has been a major change in his strategy and the way the team plays, in the formation, the style of play, and even in the players he selects. If you look closely, he is relying on young players. In other words, he wants to prepare the next generation and build for the future. His tactics may not have worked in this particular match, but as you know, the French coach is highly experienced and has a very strong squad, mashallah. Nevertheless, that does not take anything away from the work that Ouabi has done.
A Kenyan man known online as Birdman has become a viral sensation for sharing his life with rescued wild birds. Formerly homeless in Nairobi, Rogers Magutha says caring for injured birds gave him purpose and now forms part of the conservation message he's trying to send. But after videos showed him eating from the same plates as his birds, health officials are worried about the risk of diseases transmitted from animals to humans. Magutha rejects the concerns, insisting his rescued birds are free to leave once they recover. Clarice Fortuné has the story.
He's hard to miss, spending his days collecting recyclable waste around Nairobi, with a black kite often perched on his head or shoulder. The 28-year-old says rescuing injured birds changed his life after years of homelessness.
Nairobi Birdman, I am an urban birds enthusiast. I rescue birds. So you can see me with a lot of birds. Yeah, that's what I do. I love rescuing birds and even staying with them.
Magutha claims he has rescued more than 20 birds over the years, from marabou storks and ibises to owls, pigeons and black kites. But his close relationship with the birds has sparked concern. After videos showed him sharing meals with pigeons and other birds, Kenyan health officials warned that prolonged contact with wild animals could increase the risk of zoonotic diseases, infections transmitted from animals to humans. Magutha says those fears are exaggerated.
I know about the disease, they are there, but for me, I've been living on the streets where we've been eating together, we've been sleeping together in the cold, but nothing ever happened to me.
He says living alongside the birds demonstrates that humans and wildlife can coexist. Magutha hopes his growing online following will inspire others to care more about conservation.
Well, that's it from all of us on the Eye on Africa team. Thanks so much for your company and stay tuned. More news to come.